Good morning. Good morning, Redemption. We'll get started in just a minute. I'll give you some time to check the kiddos in and come have a seat. This is our 1 minute warning. Sounds a little doomsday, but 1 minute. Well, good morning, Redemption. Welcome to Exploration Sunday. How are you today? Glad to see you all. We have an exciting morning planned for you. Exploration Sunday is the first Sunday every month for us where we kind of start off, whether with a topic or what have you, but just recognizing the bigness, the greatness of God, and the ways that He's wired and created us to be curious people, that He appreciates our questions, He appreciates the exploration of our faith, to come to Him with awe and wonder. And so we just set time aside every month to do just that, and we'll oftentimes bring in a guest speaker to come in and pour into our community. And this morning we are blessed to have Meredith Miller with us, who many of you have been reading her book. She's a pastor and an author of the book Woven, and so she'll be up in a little bit, and we'll have some space after she's done sharing with us to do some Q&R time. And so there will be time for questions and response. And so make sure as she's teaching that you're jotting down some questions, and we'll have some time for that to kind of dialogue and chat through some of those things. And so lots of exciting things. So we're going to jump right into it. Let's give it up for Erica, our children's director. She's going to come up and do family business. And we've got a lot of exciting things planned. She's straight from youth retreat right now. So there we go. We were joking. She's like ministry whiplash. And I'm like, I get it. All right. From one context to the other. But she's crushing it, right? Yeah. There you are.
Crushing it. Good morning, everybody. My name is Erica. I lead the kids and youth here at Redemption. I just want to welcome everyone this morning. If you are not familiar with our community, if this maybe is your first time or your second time or third or fourth, and you haven't filled out a Connect card, there's a really beautiful table over there that has like some art that matches this that is really nice. And there's Connect cards on that table. If you fill one of those out, you'll get our emails, you'll get our information, you'll get details. It'll be fantastic. We'll start a relationship and it'll be wonderful. So if you're new here, please go ahead and fill that out. We actually have a lot that's going on in the next month or so. But before we do that, because they decided to give me a microphone this morning, I am just coming. I woke up this morning and I drove home from youth retreat, and I just have to say, when we talk, like Mike explains exploration, and when we talk about exploration and we talk about the ways that we're curious about God and we ask questions and we explore, our youth are doing this in such a beautiful way. My watch is telling me to relax. You all make me nervous. Our youth are doing this in such a beautiful way. I got to sit with 6 kids from our youth group this weekend and explore the sacred pathways, and we spent an hour and a half where they just explored different stations. And I've got to tell you, I have hope, not just for their futures, but like for our future collectively. If this is what the youth look like coming up, we're all going to be okay. And I just want you all to know that. We're all going to be okay if we have these kids exploring in this way. And if you don't know how to explore, just go talk to one of them. They're fantastic. Now back to the regular business. This month, we have quite a few things going on. First things first, this Wednesday is a women's board night. And no, that does not mean you are going to sit and twiddle your thumbs all night. It's a board night in charcuterie board. So maybe you like a sweet charcuterie board. Maybe you like a savory charcuterie board. Whatever you like, put it on a board and bring it to Marcy Kimura's house at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, August 7th. Next thing, I don't want the men to feel left out. So there's a men's retreat that's also coming up, September 27th to 29th. Dudes love a retreat. I gotta say, I feel like our guys in this community retreat really well, both in like growing together and also playing together. So if you are a man and you'd like to go to men's retreat, there was a link in the email on Thursday, and there's a link on our website. Am I right on that? And the link works now. I know that last week Dave told you the link didn't work, but the link works now. So use the link. And then lastly, coming up before men's retreat is community group launch. If you are not in a community group, now is the time for you to sign up to be in a community group. we have a vision for everyone in our community to be plugged in a community group. And Mike works really hard on this. Mike works to connect people. He works to sort of fit people where they need to go. And if you want to be in a group before fall launches, you have to sign up now. So whether you're not in a group and you'd like to join a group, whether your group may be disbanded and you don't have a group and you would like to join a new group, sign up now. You can find the sign up on that code, QR code. I think it's also on our website and also probably in the weekly email that you got. And then lastly, giving is a part of our worship. We are an abundant community, and we experience abundant life together, and part of that is sharing our finances. And so if you would like to give, you can do so online, or you can do so at the Connect table over there. Before we invite Meredith up this morning, one of the things that we do as part of Exploration Sunday is we have an artist opening. And this is a way for somebody to sort of share with us the way that God is meeting them in a different kind of worship. And so I'd love to invite Jen Castro up this morning. She is going to share with us her artist opening.
Hi. I was thinking this morning as I walked up, I would say, "Oh, hi, fam." And I was like, oh my gosh, I remember when I first came to this church and someone said that. And I was like, oh, what a kitschy Costa Mesa thing to say. And then I realized as I've spoken that it ends up being a true reflection of how the person feels when they come to stand here and see the faces that they're seeing. So anyway, I'm going to share this morning about music, which is kind of fun. You guys have had an opportunity to hear me play a lot, and I want to tell you a little bit about music in my life. And I wrote it, so I'm going to try to read it so I don't ramble too much. I grew up in a family of music and was afforded a really lovely opportunities to explore and grow as a musician from a very, very young age. The church I attended growing up was a Pentecostal church. Lots of music, very charismatic, really important, huge emphasis, full choir and orchestra with the robes. And starting at 11, I played flute and somehow fit into one of those robes, sitting there huge on me. But our worship pastor was actually a full-time music director who scored music for all the instruments, moving from hymns to choruses, and that was a big part of that era. But when I was 13, he moved away with his family. And that Sunday that he left, his last Sunday, he asked me to play the piano for his going away service. I was 13. I didn't think anything of this at the time, but I'm like, wow, that's really young. And it was only 3 songs, but looking back, it was very much an informal commissioning service to me playing the piano for the rest of my life in church. And so through junior high and high school, my mom and I were the ones that were the church pianists, taking turns back and forth. And at the same time I was doing this, I was starting to play in jazz band at my junior high. And wouldn't you know it, my conductor in junior high was also a jazz pianist. And so I got to learn really cool stuff about improvisation, and I learned quickly that I could take what I was learning in school and apply it at church. And I was getting really bored repeating "Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus" during 10-minute long Pentecostal prayers, let me tell you. Those services were like, bring your lunch, we're gonna be here for 3 hours. But I also learned quickly that nobody was listening to me, and they had zero care as to what I was playing. So I really started let me try a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and no one cared. And that's kind of where my roots grew as improving in church. I also found myself playing piano every day after school as a way to decompress. I didn't know that I was practicing my spiritual pathway. I just knew it was imperative to my existence and participation in life. I would also find myself writing little bits of music that apparently functioned as short prayers. They would be little things I would be at home after school playing on loop for as long as it felt good, and then I would walk away. I guess this was me practicing my quiet time, but I wouldn't have known it at the time because I was told that quiet time looked a really certain way. But like I said, I was afforded some unique experiences that formed how I played the piano and used it as communion for prayer, relaxation, recovery, and messages for others. This continued as I traveled in my 20s and went to great lengths to always find a piano to play no matter where I was at in the world, sneaking into churches all over the world to play until someone asked me to stop. I realized that my anxiety was only managed by playing, and it was imperative to my existence. In my 30s, I went through a really dark time where I was questioning my faith, and I stopped playing for almost 2 years. And I excluded church from my life as well. The seeds of healing were planted when I decided to look for a piano to play. I only had a keyboard, but really a piano is what I needed. Breaking into Needham Chapel wasn't a consistent option. So I started searching for where these pianos were located, likely a church, preferably one close to my house. As I was looking at church websites, I found a white baby grand piano at a church 2 miles from my house. I saw a picture of it online, so I was like, I wonder if this is still there. People at this era, the pianos were going away and the keyboards were coming in. It was a tiny church in Orange County, just down the road, actually, with about 80 people. The first Sunday, I sat in the back with my arms folded, didn't say a word. 10 people came up to me during the meet and greet time and asked if I wanted breakfast, and cheerily said, "Glad you were here." After service, the pastor sat with me for almost 2 hours and listened to me. He asked what I needed. I said, I need a place to doubt really hard, and I also need access to play this piano whenever I want. He said, sure, no problem. After some time of letting them love on me, the first time I played the piano there was at that church for the funeral of a 1-year-old who had suffered from a difficult heart condition. After I heard that he had passed, I felt a pressing in my heart that I needed to play for that service and offered to do so. That day, I experienced what I had before many times, which was a song in the moment, like a short prophetic prayer that was just for that time, just for that moment. It's been a long journey back. That was 6 years ago. But a couple months ago, I sent this text to a group of you who I love and trust to share my experiences of 2 things can be true. I was sharing some very complicated, difficult things that were happening, and I needed prayer support for them, but at the end of the text went like this. I also want to share some goodness with you in case you are someone who was at church yesterday. If you weren't, our church did a listening practice where we received blessings for people who we were sitting with and had the opportunity to share those blessings. During that time, I was playing background piano music. I am really blessed to be part of a church that allows me to use my gifts in the way that I get to use them. I'll explain. Sometimes God gives me a little melody or a chord pattern, and it's sort of an in-the-moment prayer for that time and that space. This has happened a lot when I play for funerals, and I don't usually remember it afterwards. Anyway, yesterday there was a little melody that I felt like was just for that listening space. Maybe someone needed that one little note. Anyway, I looked across the room, was studying everyone's faces during the listening time, and it was really overwhelming. It took my breath away. I felt the room shift as God was filling the space with blessings. I don't have the words to describe what it felt like to be a part of our family that way. I don't have words to describe what it feels like to commune with the Lord in that space through music. It's so much a part of me, I can't really explain it other than to share my journey and say thank you for being a place where I can continue to practice that pathway with you all. Love you all.
Thanks, Jen. It's beautiful to hear the ways that God's working in each other's lives, and just the ways that there's just space and vulnerability in this community is so encouraging. Grateful to be a part of this church. All right. Want to welcome up Meredith. Before that, I'm just going to read her bio so we get some context to who she is and ways that she's going to speak into our community. And so, Meredith Miller is a pastor, parent, and writer who helps grown-ups and the kids they love engage with the Bible and faith in ways that are life-giving, fun, and a fit for their real lives. Her 20-plus years in family ministry for local churches, curriculum development, and faith formation research inform the resources she currently creates, including a book that many of us have read, Woven, which is nurturing a faith your kids don't have to heal from, which has been really impactful for our community over the last couple weeks. Meredith is a lead pastor of Pomona Valley Church, a church on Zoom that wants to love the one another's neighbors well and do justice, and in parentheses, eat. Meredith, we're really excited to have you. Thank you for being here. Let's give Meredith a redemption welcome as she comes to share with us this morning.
Yeah, this is dinner church week, y'all. We got Mediterranean on order. I'm real excited about it. So I come from Claremont, and it is really, really fun to be with you all. One of the things I love about Southern California, and I'm going to say it, and then it's going to like divide the room instantly, but I feel really like the unity y'all are committed to is going to overcome whatever happens after I tell you this. And so hopefully we'll be okay for the next while together. One of the things I love about this area is the park we all have nearby. My family goes there often. Our roots go deep. My grandfather welded as part of constructing it. I think we have a picture from the last time we were there. Wow. You love me or you hate me. I know, but stick with me. I know. We're those people. We are those people. My grandfather was a welder for the Matterhorn. Wow. I know. So we love it. Here's the thing. I know not all of you are going to be Disney people. I know, but I take my kids and I trust the place, really, is what it boils down to, right? It's not that they do like fanfare really well or that their actors are really committed to stuff that they do. It's not that it's all colorful and musical. Like, those are great pieces. But fundamentally, I trust that if I choose to take my boys up there for the day, down there for the day, now I forgot what side of town I'm on, we're going to have a good time. I trust the experience we'll have. That it's a chance for us to play and be together. I trust them for good things. But also, how many of y'all been there when a kid got lost? I trust them for the worst of times. I've watched how they roll out their protocol for lost children. I watched how they handle the adult who's thinking this is now the worst day of their life that they just spent $5,000 on. I've watched how they calm. I've watched how they look. And I trust them were that to happen. All I want to talk about today is trust. Specifically, I want to talk about what it looks like to be the kind of community that really grapples with and understands three unhelpful ideas. Three unhelpful ideas that can keep young people and their families, whatever their family makeup is, from experiencing the abundant life that God would want for them. There are three ideas that I think get in the way for adults when they get into our minds and hearts, but I think they do serious damage for kids that are raised up under them. And so, here's what I want to have us walk through. I want us to walk through these three unhelpful ideas together. And then once we have them top of mind, we're going to jump into a story that you may or may not know from the Gospel of John, chapter 3. And we're going to see if we can have these unhelpful ideas in mind, look at this story together, and have that bring up important things we might want to remember about what it looks like to love and follow Jesus and introduce kids to the Jesus who loves them. So, let's dive in. Unhelpful idea number one. Do we have it visually for people? Thank you. Lovely. The idea that Christian life is primarily the combination of what we believe in our minds and what we do with our actions. That Christian life is primarily the combination of what we believe in our minds and do with our actions. Okay? It's a split sort of idea. Pieces. Stuff that lives in our head. Stuff that comes out from there. And this split up idea is not very connected to the world of the people who lived in and around and wrote Scripture. It's a very Greek idea, actually, but it's not very Hebrew at all. So, for example, in the Old Testament, you might read a psalm at some point that says, "My soul glorifies the Lord." And we think, oh, soul, that's a piece of us. Except that Hebrews didn't think people had souls, and that wasn't how people were made. We're just people, whole people. And actually, that word doesn't mean soul. It just means myself, my deepest self, all myself glorifies the Lord. Or the New Testament. This might come up with words like belief or faith, and we'll read them and think, oh, this is the stuff we think about in our minds, the stuff we agree to, that we sort of assent to. But again, this is one of those places where English translation kind of comes up a bit short for us, because for biblical writers, there is no such thing as faith as a thing you have. And there's no such thing as belief as just an idea you agree with. There's trust. There's just trust. Who you trust specifically. There's who you trust and how you show it. There's what you trust, where you place it. In other words, we don't actually have what we believe and what we do as these pieced out things. We have who we are as whole people, who we trust, and then how that might get expressed in our whole lives, with our whole selves. Now, I have spent a lot of my church life close to kids and the grown-ups who love them, not just parents, but grandparents and aunties and uncles and family members and young people who are willing to help even younger people just because they care. And here's what I've seen. The unhelpful idea that this is what Christian life is has then led us to talk at children ad nauseum and talk at them. And we just keep talking at them. And then, after we've talked to them forever, we've just been relaying to them all the things that we've already as adults decided for them about what would be good for them, about what they should believe, and about how they should act. And all of that, we're convinced, is totally fine, because as adults, we've decided that the goal of all of this is obedience. And so this is obedience training. Obedience training is great for puppies. Any of y'all ever had a puppy? Right? Puppies need obedience training. Puppies need obedience training because all puppies need to do certain things in order to be successful in their new homes. Do not pee in my house is a universally adhered to behavior. Kids aren't puppies, and you're not a puppy. And we don't actually all express our trust in God by universally adhering to identical behaviors that we're all supposed to fit in with forever. And so, all right then. I kind of want to wait, but then I feel like it's even worse because I know you're trying so hard. It's okay if all of y'all also had the Olympics on. I totally get it. I would too. This is why my church likes being on Zoom 3/4 of the time, right? Split screen dynamics where it's like, oh yeah, no, I'm in church and also I'm watching the gymnastics finals right now. This is a real thing. All right, so this is our first unhelpful idea. And some of you are like, I'm still tripped up because fundamentally I thought this is what it is, but stick with me. Unhelpful idea number 2. Faith is fundamentally list management. Here's the list of beliefs. Here's the to-do list. Here's the do-not-do list. See, when we think that everything is this universal set of behaviors and beliefs, then it makes sense that we have these lists. Things that Christians do and things that Christians don't do. And we're sure that we can fill those lists out because it's universally accepted that we're all identical in this. And then we can just roll things out from there. Now, part of my career has had fun in terms of being on research teams. Yay, research. I love data. It's so fun. And we studied, in particular, young people in faith formation. So the very first project I was on We watched these youth group seniors over the first 3 years out of high school. And we asked them all kinds of questions about their faith experience, and we surveyed them in all kinds of fun ways. And it was terrific. It's just that fundamentally, when they started talking about their faith, they started talking about lists. They started talking about all the things they knew they were supposed to be doing, but they couldn't anymore because class was really busy. They started talking about all the things they'd done that they know they weren't supposed to do, and now they didn't know what to do next. They had fundamentally a moralistic faith, a faith that believed that they were supposed to be good, do the things they were supposed to do, and they were supposed to be less bad and not do the things they weren't supposed to do. It was a list management sort of faith. And even before research started sharing how kids felt this way, raised in these churches that told them exactly what to believe and how to believe it and how to act it all out, there was Dallas Willard saying all kinds of things about the gospel of sin management as this idea that that's the whole project. More good, less bad. And we put kids oftentimes on a sin management plan well before they've even had the chance to get to know the God that purportedly wants this from them. And my hunch is that you probably know these lists. Some of you, do you know these lists? Yeah. You think you know these lists, yes? You're all staring blankly. We're undercaffeinated this morning. Awesome. I think you do, which means I am going to give you 3 minutes. You are going to find some people around you, some people you came with, some people that are nearby. Get into a group of 4 to 6. I would like for you, please, to pick one person who will get out a phone, open up the Notes app. You need to make the lists. Okay, so good Christians do. Da 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 da. Good Christians don't. Da 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 da. Whatever's on it. Now, this does not have to be that you agree with it, and it doesn't have to be that you've experienced it. We just kind of know what's in the water. Okay, so we're just naming what we've seen, heard, observed, and perhaps some of it has also been your experience, but it doesn't have to be driven by that. Just what do you know about the lists? I'm going to tell you now you want to make them as long as possible. Okay? Go. Find some folks. Take a few minutes. One more minute. One more minute. All right, 10 seconds. Last idea. One last something. Three, two, one. You got to wrap it up. Get the last one typed in. Got your list. Beautiful. All right. So whoever has the list on behalf of the group, you are going to need to share it accordingly, because what I am wondering at this point is who's got bingo. Anybody? How many of you are one away? One away? Groups that are one away? Okay, but no one's got all the way through. Every time I do this, someone's like, really? Someone gets hung up on that? And it's like, oh yeah, someone gets hung up on that. Whatever it is, someone gets hung up on that. This is what I love. Yes. How is yoga bad? Oh, honey, it's Eastern and spiritual, and we're, every posture was a prayer to not Jesus, and, we got to get real worried about that. I'm telling you. Everything on there, someone's hung up about. This is the thing. If we just think that all there is to Christian life is what we believe and how we act, and if we think that we can just know that and lock it down, then we put it on two lists, and we tell kids especially, here are the two lists, and they are yours to manage forever and always so that you can get bingo, and that makes God happy. And how is that not abundant life? See, and then that leads us to our third and final unhelpful idea, because you have to figure out, where are the lists going to come from? Where do we give you all the things you're going to put in so you can get your spiritual bingo card? And that will take us to the Bible. And here's our third unhelpful idea, that the Bible's just here to populate the lists with the right things, right? To instruct us about the right things to believe in our brains, give us the right list of actions to do and not to do. That's all Scripture's here for, is to just populate that list for us. Right beliefs, right actions, until we get to bingo. But that isn't how Scripture works, thank goodness, right? It is neither a modern textbook, a history book, a science book, but it is also not a morality-producing manual. It is not a list of axioms that we decide we agree with and assent to in our brains. It is much more like Pastor Trey Ferguson will say, a library, full of so many writers who bring their own voices and insights into a story. If I'm telling kids what it's like, I say it's Mr. Potato Head. All these different pieces that collectively form something whole, but they're each unique. It's our family story about who our God is and what we believe our God has done and what we think that means we can trust our God to do. And a whole lot of people who are trying to figure out if that really would hold up in the face of the realities they experienced every day. Now, in the book of James, there's this little phrase about this idea that faith without works is dead. And that has often been meant that to kids, we're like, so we got to get those works going. But what I'd really like for us to think about is what happens with the opposite. All works, no time to build trust. Just do what you're supposed to. Because sure, trusting somebody and having it impact their life in no tangible way is nonsense. But also, when we just do works forever without trust, we end up in places we don't want to be. See, here's what happened when we followed those youth group kids, and then Christian Smith and his team at Notre Dame followed a whole bunch of kids, and all these people started talking through what they were sharing about their experiences faith-wise. And they came up with a term. It's a fancy academic term, in case you're feeling fancy and academic this morning. It's called moralistic therapeutic deism. That what they actually believe with a list management faith is that you are meant to be good. That's the moralistic part. That's the whole goal. That it is meant to make you happy all the time. That's the therapeutic part. And deism is a view of God, a God who is far away, watching, but not involved, observing, but not close by. A deistic God is monitoring the situation. So moralistic therapeutic deism became the representative term for the way young people who were raised in list management faith believe it all works. I manage my lists, and God watches to see if I'm doing well. And if I am successful in that project, God owes me crisis prevention and happiness provision. That's the deal. And then we end up in one of two places at the end of it, or maybe both at once. First would be absolute exhaustion, because it is exhausting to manage your own goodness forever and always, amen. To spend all of your energy trying to be more good and less bad every damn day. That is not life. Or disillusionment, because life has pain and crisis and hardship. It comes for every one of us and every one of our kids. There's no preventing it. And if all I've ever done is tried to get my spiritual bingo card filled out, and then God doesn't show up when life gets hard in the way I thought God would, if God didn't prevent the thing, and now I'm in the middle of it, what then? There's just something about lists that have us not experiencing life. And life is the point. It's not like a nice bonus if you manage the list. Life is the point. Life is the thing God made everybody for in the first place. Life is the thing Jesus came to make sure people had access to. Life's the point. Kids keep getting told that managing the list will lead to life, but list management is precisely the thing that keeps them from it. Because life is found in knowing God and being known by God, and having your own belovedness absolutely disconnected from how you perform and behave. And so, with these three unhelpful ideas in mind, can we tell a Bible story? In John chapter 3, a man named Nicodemus comes to Jesus in the middle of the night. Nicodemus is a Pharisee, and Pharisees often get sort of flattened into these like cartoon caricatures, if you have ever gotten a chance to read them in Scripture. But it is safe to say Pharisees represent this idea that what God wants most is obedience. Pharisees obey, right? They don't just obey what we have in the law. Some groups of them had this awesome phrase, putting a fence around the law, and then they're going to be outside of that, just a little extra margin, just to be safe. It's quite an image. And so they make sure that whatever it is that God has said, they're even more down the line a lot of the time. Point is, dude's got lists. And he comes to Jesus in the middle of the night, which is important for John because John has this whole thing going on with like symbols of light and darkness, where light is often this idea of understanding things, seeing them clearly. Darkness is often a symbol of not yet understanding, having something they still need to know. So Nicodemus comes to Jesus at night, symbolism. And he says, Rabbi, we all know God has sent you to teach us. Your miraculous signs are evidence. God's with you. I tell you the truth, Jesus says. Oh, wait, hold on. We're going to stop it. God is with you. Nicodemus believes that Jesus is a teacher and has God's backing. That is why Jesus can do signs. Signs are John's word for miracles. John loves to say them because they literally point to who Jesus is. He's being very helpful in that way. And so what Nicodemus is trying most of all to figure out then is whether or not this person is trustworthy. Right? Nicodemus speaks of the signs Jesus has been doing. They seem to be evidence that Jesus is indeed sent from God and that he can be trusted. God's power is going with him as he moves forward, and his ministry is out doing this mission of announcing that the reign of God is real and here and among us. And then Jesus responds, I tell you the truth. Unless you're born again, you cannot see the kingdom of God. Now, if we were to read on, John 3:3-15, there's this conversation that happens back and forth between the two of them. talking more and more about this metaphor of new birth, born again, or born from above, or born from the Spirit, depending on what kind of translation you're looking at. But the whole key to a birth metaphor is that generally, although not always, when someone is born, that's when they begin to be part of the family. That you're born into the family. The same way that most people born from parents become family to them. In other words, Jesus is uniting people, not around their common beliefs that they all have identically, not around their common obedience and how they all behave the same, but around the common person, around himself. Those who are born into this family. So idea number one was that the Christian life is primarily what we believe in our minds and what we do with our actions. And then Jesus says to Nicodemus, there's me. And there's this life in the family of God. Now, if you continue on with the nighttime conversation between them, John wants to keep building this case for who Jesus is, not just a teacher or a prophet or a messenger or an angel, but God, Word made flesh. And why is he here? Is he here to correct the lists, clarify them a little bit, shore them up so everyone's got them locked down for the next era? Because if that is why Jesus is here, what we are about to read would be the moment he'd say so. If Jesus' whole purpose is, hey, Nicodemus, I really appreciate all this list management effort, but I think you've got a few items here or there that need correcting. So we're just going to get that all clarified for you, and then off you go. This would be the moment he'd say so in the conversation. And instead, we get verses that many of you are likely to be familiar with. God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him will not perish but have eternal life. 4, God did not send his Son into the world to condemn the world, but to save the world through him. Whoever believes in him is not condemned, but whoever does not believe stands condemned already because they have not believed in the name of God's one and only Son. Now, I would like for us to work backwards because a lot of us know 3:16 and either don't know or have decided to skip 18 because that sounds really uncomfortable. But this description, whoever does not believe is already condemned. It's a description, not something God is doing. God is not the one condemning. It is a way to describe the feeling of life when a person is not able to experience what God would hope for them. It's this idea that the other things a person might trust, they bring a certain experience of darkness, like the misery of believing God abandoned you in your grief because you maintained your list just right and tragedy came anyway. Or the depression that follows the exhaustion from working so hard to be more good and less bad. There's an Old Testament scholar, his name's John Goldingay, I love him. Whenever he is talking about the things that people could trust that would be idols, he translates it in this very interesting way. He calls them no gods. The no gods. As in, there is a God who is offering life, and there are no gods who say they can offer life, but they can never deliver. And these can look all sorts of ways, but it's anything we trust. When we finish the sentence, whatever happens, it'll all be okay because, however we fill in that blank, usually helps reveal it. All idols, all no gods, their ways don't lead to life. And that's the experience that Jesus is describing. Not a God who condemns, but a person who's put their trust somewhere that promised and can't deliver, and nothing feels nearly as abundant as they hoped it would be. Our second unhelpful idea was that faith is fundamentally list management. But the no God of list management, I would argue, is the one who leads us condemned to exhaustion and disillusionment, while Jesus is offering life. A life of joy and freedom and actually knowing in our bones how deeply loved we are. And that brings us back to the verses many of us know by heart if we have church backgrounds. A God who loves the world. A God who gives themselves to the world, that whoever can trust, not believe, but trust, because that's how the word works, will have life. A God who didn't send their Son to condemn, but to save. A God who is offering eternal life, which, by the way, does not mean a life that starts after death and then moves into eternity. It's a life that starts now and continues on. Anytime you see the phrase eternal life in the Bible, you're not talking about something that you push play on after. You're talking about something that's available now and can continue. Our third unhelpful idea was that the Bible's just here to populate the lists. Right ideas to believe, right things to do or not to do. But the Bible's here to tell us a story of a God who came right up close to us, loving and saving, inviting Nicodemus and any of us who want to trade in lists for life, to trade a fence around the law for a family table. We aren't a group united around our common beliefs that we all agree on, and we're not a group united around obeying just right. We are a group united around the person of Jesus who sits at a table and says, "Do you want to eat with me?" And there's a seat at our table for every kid, unless we hand them lists instead. And we're talking about kids, but we're also talking about you, because whatever it is you think about who God is and what God's like, that's what you hand on to the kids in your life. It's what we give to the next generation. And a lot of us, maybe without realizing it, really do think God is a list giver, not a life giver, and that that's the whole point. Maybe we were raised that way, or we just haven't had the chance to sit at the table with Jesus long enough to realize that we can stay there as long as we feel like. What Jesus is doing is giving himself, giving freedom and making us family. And we can let kids have that same experience. To have the freedom to know that God didn't come to condemn, but to save. A family that we become because we're all born again through him. Life. Nicodemus comes to Jesus, and Jesus offers himself. Kind of like how the children come to Jesus, and he offers them himself. I think we have one more. Y'all might know this if you've been. Lost children. I've seen a lot of kids get lost in church. A lot of them wondering if anyone's going to help them get reconnected to their safe people and their home. And the thing is, the church should be the safest place to be lost. Because it's the people that are always going to help you find your way home. We should be the very safest place for every kid's question and doubt. We should be the very safest place for kids going through pain, because we will walk with it for as long as it takes. We could be the safest place to be lost because we're always going to help you come home. We can be people of life. To one another, for one another. We can stare down any force of death, knowing our God has gone through it and come out the other side. So maybe we can too. So this morning I took the 10 to the 57 to the 5 to the 55 just to be with y'all, which means I cannot leave without saying, as emphatically as I know how, that when it comes to the kids you all get to raise together, and make no mistake, if you are parenting or not parenting, you are a church raising kids together. That when you do this, please do not use the Bible as a list of rules to manage their behavior. Don't do that to the kids, and don't do that to the Bible. Don't turn it into a brittle textbook or a threatening rule book. Invite them into a family story. And please do not tell them to obey Jesus before they've even had the chance to get to know Jesus, because it's absolutely backwards to ask a kid to obey a God they don't know and follow a God they don't trust. Give them time and space and support. And then do not mock their trust building journey with tidy answers to difficult questions and trite little platitudes for their pain. Just be with them as they are trying to figure out if God can be trusted. Let the children come to Jesus. who wants to give them life. And do not hinder them. Amen. Okay.
You're giving me another microphone?
Multi-mic day.
Thanks,
man.
Meredith.
Real fancy.
We have about 15 minutes just for some questions and response, and so I want to kind of, Erica, if you have something you want to get started on?
Yeah.
This would be the time. If you also, Jess will be roaming for some questions as well, and so Erica will get us started, and then feel free just to slip your hand up. We'll try to get to as many as we can to honor Meredith this time. Okay?
Thank you. We appreciate your wisdom and being with us. I think something that kept coming to mind for me as you were speaking is these three unhelpful truths or ideas, not truths, ideas. I think a lot of us in this room were maybe raised with those pummeled into us and are in the process of unlearning those as adults and maybe haven't unlearned them yet, but have either young kids ourselves or, again, are part of a community raising kids together. And so I guess a question I have for you is, how would you encourage somebody who is in the process of unlearning while also reteaching?
Yeah. It is what Nicodemus says. You go to who is this God that I think I'm trying to trust. Because I think the risk could be that we want to exchange unhealthy lists with like better lists. So we just like had a list management system and we knew that all the stuff that filled the bingo card was like really draining or maybe unhealthy. And so then we just look for like the better replacement, but we still haven't actually broken out of a list management mindset or a functional theology that that's the whole point. We just think we have to get better lists, healthier lists, more biblical lists, whatever the thing is. And I think you have to give yourself personally the time and space to say, who is God, as best I can tell, knowing I'm never going to land that. What is God like? And let the space of getting to know God the same way you would get to know any person that you're trying to figure out. How do I want to relate to you? Are you a trustworthy person? Will I let you have influence in my life? You let it be that personal space of like, okay, who are we talking about here? And that could be really long for some of us, depending on just our whole story. But if you switch too quickly to just better lists, you're still going to miss the chance to just be known and loved by a God who would like to let you rest, I think. Yeah.
So good. Yeah, I was just thinking a little bit about my faith growing up in the church, but also just reflecting, like in my own household, we given my dad, Steve, a real hard time with the list that he makes every single day. So like when he starts the day, he creates this to-do list for the day. And so like a very type A personality, when you like tell someone like that to like get rid of the list, you know, like how disorienting I think that can feel, or chaotic, or just like, wait, what, you just want, you know, me to whatever. And then just thinking like to Jesus, when you're talking about the Pharisees, right, where it's like the laws, the 605 laws, and Jesus comes down to like 3, where there's this idea of simplifying or, and so my question, I guess, is, while there's other people about to ask some questions, how would you give us some practical encouragement to the disorientation of that for someone in here that this is really how they function in the relationship with God? Like this is all they know. Yeah.
I would start perhaps by reflecting on like your typical week. The things that you know you need to take care of and the people you're going to generally see, the stuff that sort of fills out your calendar. And then be thinking through what would an ordinary week look like if I really believed I was unconditionally loved and so was everyone else I was going to encounter. What might I say or do that I'm not at the moment? What might I quit because it actually isn't life-giving? And there probably then are some ideas or habits or practices that would like support that. Because it's not that we're doing nothing.
Right.
It's that we're living like beautifully ordinary lives in the love of God. And a lot of times the lists are like extra It's like our life and then also this other thing. And so if we started from our life again and said, what if I'm inviting this in? And that could spark a space of maybe some stuff you've been doing totally stays because it supports being anchored in your own belovedness or extending that to others. And then maybe there's some stuff that you're like, I keep doing that thing and it doesn't help this happen. And that's where you would look to be like, I'm just going to quit those few things and see what happens. And then you can always bring them back. If you're like desperately sad that you lost something off a list and you're like, I really don't like it, like bring it back.
Sure.
But to experiment that way from a typical week maybe could be a starting point.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Well, we'd like to invite some others to jump in here on the conversation. Who has a question? Coming over to Holden. Thanks, Holden, for getting us started.
Thanks, Jessica. Meredith, thank you so much for sharing this morning. It was awesome. I think that I have to unlearn like many of those three things. We raised 2 young girls, and that's one of the reasons why we've been so excited to jump into this community is that there looks to be a lot of people raising young kids. And I was wondering how you think about and approach discipline regarding parenting. It's a really tough question for me. I don't think I had the best example growing up as far as my parents, and they weren't on the same team either. And so, you know, when my oldest was under 2, it felt very simple. It felt as if like unlimited compassion, unlimited grace was like a really good way of handling it. Now that she's almost 3 and her sister's 1, it feels like I don't know what to do when, you know, she kicks her sister or, you know, like does something to somebody like that who's completely defenseless, completely innocent. It seems as if there's a piece of her that knows that that is like hurting that person, and I don't know what to do. Like I'm like, part of me thinks like, well, you need to know pain because that is, you're inflicting pain, and so you have to understand that.
Yeah.
Or like you need to, I've tried everything that I know how to try, and I don't know if it's helping. I don't know. Yeah.
Yes.
So that,
I love it.
that's basically it. I don't know how to parent a 3-year-old is kind of what it boils down to.
Do any of us?
I
know
love
how
it.
to
I was
parent a
going to say,
3-year-old?
mine are 9 and 11, so now I don't have to worry about it anymore. Oh, it's so good. Okay, so some thoughts on the in-the-moment stuff. I think the really helpful thing in the last handful of years have been these, like, parenting experts, like how to teach humans to human. And they are coming on with things like thinking about it as learning. What is it that my kid needs to learn that they clearly are not equipped for yet? And that changes at every age and stage. But that question is far more interesting as like a parent. Like, oh, I'm in a learning process with you on how to human. And humans don't hit each other because it hurts. And because we don't want to be hit back. I think when you then think about a faith piece of that, a lot of times what has gone awry, in addition to, I think, the corporal punishment question, which I think has been really damaging in a lot of ways. But even without that, we've thought that in order to be Christian parents, we need to make sure the kid knows like how God feels about the behavior. Like it's not just like, hey, we don't hit because that hurts each other, but like also you're hitting made God sad. Like the amount of preschool resources that tell preschoolers that God is like happy or sad because of everything they did. Y'all, if like God is very emotionally manipulated by our 3-year-olds in the system. I actually think there's just wisdom to what does my 3-year-old need to learn, because God wants my 3-year-old to grow into a whole human. As if God doesn't know what it's like to be 3. As if God doesn't realize that a child is a child who's in process. And there's been, the reason Christian parenting has often been wrong is that it has not let a kid grow as a kid. We've expected kids to exhibit adult obedience because we're so sure obedience is the goal. And we actually get to let that go and say learning is the goal. So I can just talk about how I help my kid learn. And it will not be that I was a good parent because the behavior immediately changed. I will be a good parent because I was with my kid in a process as they learned. And we practiced forgiveness along the way when it went wrong, including if I lost my temper at him. And we're learning how to human because being whole humans is God's endeavor. And then I think when it comes to the faith piece, at some point there is like something about who God is that animates why we hope they'd be that way. But you can talk about that separately. Like you don't discipline in the moment for like, also here's God's whole position on nonviolence, everybody. We just talk about what they need in the moment. But someday you can talk about, I think our God is inviting us into peacemaking. And even little things like hitting, that always just means more hitting. So we practice not hitting. And that can even be just a separate, you have pieces of conversations. It's like they all overlap together. The older a kid gets, the more they can connect the two. The mistake is often with young kids that we think we have to do it all in the moment. They can't take it in. We just teach them what they need for the moment. So that would be my thought.
You good now, Holden?
Problem solved, right? We did
Good
it.
to go?
We
All right.
did it.
We'll
yeah.
check in next week.
Okay, good.
At your Wednesday mentoring time,
Yes.
right?
yes.
Hi.
Hey, Michelle. Hi.
Okay, this is more questions springing from your book, which I read, 5 stars, no notes. But it also
the
goes,
nicest. I want to hang out here one day.
it also kind of like ties in with the bingo question. Okay, one of the core things that you talk about is giving your kids the space and the safety to ask questions because you genuinely believe in a God that is trustworthy and will get them to that point. Love that, yes. What does that look like when it comes to teaching our kids how to engage with people who believe things that are very different from them, like different religions and things like that? Because I feel like I grew up in a home that was like, okay, we are believing in the capital T truth, and people who aren't believing in that, there's like big consequences to that. Yeah. So it was either this energy of like conversion, and that was the primary thing in engagement, or it was kind of like an otherness or a fear or a distance, or you want to be with people who are like-minded. There's unlearning I have to do there, but I'm curious, what is your approach with your own kids? What would be your advice when it comes to like, how do you teach your kids how to engage with people that believe things that are super different from them and different religions? What's the balance between like honoring what they believe, cultivating safety, having conversation, believing in a God that is trustworthy, that can change them, with the line of like, if you believe that this person you care about is going to like have a very different outcome than you, what's the urgency of the conversion hope? Like,
Yeah. All of
tell
that.
me.
Real easy.
Have fun.
So yeah, we're just gonna solve these things.
Simple question.
We're just gonna solve these
So
things.
sorry, I was laying in bed last night thinking about this.
Yep, no, I love it. I do love it. Okay, we'll take it in 2 parts. Conversations with the kids in our life, because they are around folks who believe a whole range of things. I think one of the helpful guiding questions is like, who do we trust and what are they like? Like, which gods do we trust and what are those gods like? I think a lot of us are used to a system, do you believe in God or not? And that was really not a question on the minds of folks in the world of the Bible hardly at all. It was like, there's a whole bunch of options, and then you're choosing where you're gonna put your trust based on who those gods are. So one example, if this is like a newer concept to you, you might read the Bible and see Baal a lot, right? That's a familiar name. Baal's a rain god. If you live in a drought kind of climate and you need rain or you starve, it would be very compelling to wonder if you could just sacrifice a few things just right to Baal to make sure that that rain's gonna come. And this idea that you would just live a trusting life in Yahweh, God of Israel, who just claims to be like over the whole world, could feel like a little risky at first. Like, but what if the rain doesn't come and how are we gonna be? Like, it's who and what. Now then you say, for kids then, I know it seems like, oh, that's a weird, hard question. It's really accessible to kids. This idea of like, well, everyone is trying to figure out, is there a God and what are they like? And so your friends say yes, and they seem to say that this God would be these ways, based on whatever the friends have maybe shared with them or whatever they've learned about in social studies or whatever the source has been. And so that'd be curious, what do you think about that? So that's the kind of conversation is, everyone's asking, is there a God and what are they like? We're asking, is there a God and what are they like? And then I'm careful with kids to speak in the first person. I think that Jesus is what God is like. And I think I can trust the stories we know about Jesus, both from the Bible and from people that we know that love him. But I understand that everyone's asking that, and it's not always easy to know. So then your friends your kids' friends, they're in process too, right? It's not we are right and your friends are wrong. We are all figuring out, is there a God and what are they like? I also often say to kids the phrase, I'm here to help you as you figure that out, because we're all asking that question always. I also think when it comes to then the flip side of your question of like, what about the part of us that has been told that if you're wrong, you're going to hell? Let's just name it blunt, right? One, ain't nobody changing their mind because we debated our way through it, right? So ain't no reason to tell our kids that's what they should be doing in class. We change our minds about who is this God and what are they like, because the God has won us over with trustworthiness. If there is something truer in Jesus, their friends learn it because they've become trustworthy to one another through kindness and curiosity and mutual respect, where you can say, I think that this is who God is and what God is like, and I have listened well to you as you said that too. And so, and then there just comes that idea of if our God is trustworthy, won't that all surface over time? Isn't there a process that we can say the Spirit really does work? The image of God within us is always pulling us to home, to love, to true. So that paradigm that said what we needed to do was equip kids with truth, capital T, and then apologetics for debate, I just think the whole paradigm kind of dies. And you replace it with, everyone's asking, is there a God and what are they like? Your friends are asking it, their families are answering it all sorts of different ways. And then the proof of whether that is a God that is worth following is if there's life to be found there. Is it life-giving? And I am here to help you as you do. And so if your friend ever says something and you're like, I don't know what the deal is with that, come home, let's talk about it. If you ever hear a thing, you're like, I'm not sure that's true. Cool, let's talk about it. I am here to help you as you do. I think that's the place to work from.
So good. Erica, did you want to have a thought on that?
I just think as I'm hearing you speak, there's so much for me of just, I think, sorry, I'm not good on panels, and I talk to children a lot.
You're doing great.
My brain works slower. I think the thing that keeps coming to my mind is just this idea of like people encountering their creator. And so the moments that we can point to our kids where they have encountered their creator and where they have felt alive and they've experienced life, and allowing them to have those eyes for other people where they can see other people come alive is, I think, an undercurrent of how we can also be having those conversations, is to get them to look for where they see life in themselves and in the people around them. And call that, as they get older, I think call that out in themselves and in the people around them. And the interactions that they'll have will then show people such goodness and kindness that will blow people's minds.
Yeah. Well said. We have time for one more, and just a reminder, if you have a question that you didn't get to, Meredith will be hanging out on the patio at the end. So we'll come right over here, and then Meredith will send us out with the benediction.
I'm with Michelle. Great book. I've been loving it. No notes. I think reading your book feels like a breath of fresh air as I've fumbled my way through the past 12 years of parenting. But I think I'm finding that the control and maybe micromanaging of my earlier part of parenting, and when it comes to nurturing faith, doesn't work. Sugar. And I'm curious if you have practical daily advice for us as parents, but also just as humans, recognizing that control and micromanaging doesn't work, and how do we release that in our parenting and in our humaning?
I love being in charge so much that I really feel this in my bones. Yeah, the reality that we don't get to control it. Apologies is an everyday practice. Maybe not literally every day by grace. But like anytime an adult comes back to a kid over something big or small and is like, I handled that wrong and I'm sorry. I got too big at you because, even the older they get, I got too big at you because that felt out of control to me and I didn't like it. But that wasn't actually you. You didn't make me mad, I'm sorry. Apologies are a big everyday practice because it makes us people of grace. It is a testament to the idea that really you cannot mess up too hard to be outside the bounds of love. And we can go first in that. The older they get, the more you can reflect back on bigger things to say, we did our best to help you get to know God, and now I'm realizing I might have misrepresented God as somebody who only cared if you listened to me. And I'm sorry. But in the everyday, having practices of apology and mending, we are people who can do that. I think that's huge. I think the other practice I'd look for is maybe something like creating margin, white space, around your schedule. Because when we're less rushed, we are less tight-gripped on things. There's something about like my brain, my body, when I am like going, when I am late to pick up and when we've got to get to the next thing, and I will become more controlling when my schedule is this jammed. And I sometimes wonder if we just create like 5-minute pockets between things to breathe and to be, and maybe we don't have the podcast on, or maybe we don't, and how that might then like create release in our heart and soul, because then we're not like shuttling our family through all the things. And so I might start thinking through, like, do I set an alarm to ping just 5 minutes earlier to get to the places I need to go so that I have this much margin so that I can receive my child with more like openness. And I'm so glad to see you. And isn't this a great day we get to live? Because it's our ordinary lives in the love of God. I'd start with those two maybe.
I would also just like be gentle with yourselves.
Yeah.
It's not easy. It's really hard. And I think when I look at who God is, that's a God of gentleness and a God of kindness and a God of love who views you as people, humans, parents, teachers, whoever you are, views you the same way that you are looking to view your child. And so treat yourself with gentleness and treat yourself with kindness, as you are also a human that is discovering these things along the way as well. I think in the same way that our children are discovering their faith as they're walking through this, we're discovering parenting. Like, it's a side-by-side journey, and be gentle with yourself.
Absolutely.
Can we thank Meredith for being here? Let's stand together. Meredith, would you send us out with a benediction?
Love to.
All right.
Set the coffee down. Oh, I love the benediction part. May the grace and the love, the joy and the peace that is always flowing from our triune God be with you now and until we meet again. And all God's children said,